Uber promises an urgent investigation into sexual harassment claims made in a former employee's blog post. A female software engineer for the ride-sharing service says her complaints were repeatedly mismanaged or ignored by the company. She wrote that her manager sent a string of messages. He said he was, quote, trying to stay out of trouble at work, but he couldn't help getting in trouble because he was looking for women to have sex with. CBS News has not been able to independently verify her story. The blog post made national headlines and drew attention to what many women say is an even bigger problem in the tech industry. New York Times correspondent and CBS News contributor Jodi Kantor is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
So she says this actually happened on her first day by her manager. She was propositioned for sex.
And what is so striking about this set of allegations is that the crime was bad, but that the cover-up was worse. She said not only was she propositioned for sex, but that really a lot of management was complicit. HR was in on it. She was told that she essentially was going to be ignored, that she would suffer job consequences herself. She says in her blog post that she ran this up the chain of command and was told to basically stay silent, that other women had the same complaint and that they were hushed up too.
She was told initially that she was the first complaint, but subsequently discovered that multiple people had made complaints against this man.
Exactly. And part of what's so striking here, by the way, is what didn't happen. She did not bring a lawsuit, right? Maybe she will, but she hasn't yet. A lot of women I'm seeing in my reporting are choosing to essentially try this in the court of public opinion, to come forward about what happened publicly instead of bringing a case in court.
The court of public opinion is certainly speaking up. Her blog was very well written and very meticulous. But Travis Kalanick, who has responded, he's the head of Uber, says this in a memo that he sent yesterday to employees and released to the public, says there's no place for this kind of behavior at Uber, that the company is determined to, quote, take what's happened as an opportunity to heal wounds of the past and set a new standard for justice in the workplace. So what did you make of Uber's response so far? It does seem like they're taking it very seriously. He's hired Eric Holder to investigate.
Well, first of all, they didn't deny the charges. So even these are just allegations at this point, but that's pretty telling. Yes, they are going to conduct an investigation. And actually, the event to watch is today. They're having an all-hands meeting of employees. Uber's a pretty secretive company, so we may not find out exactly what happens. But my colleague, Mike Isaac, is reporting that many Uber employees are extremely concerned about what's happened. And they're also concerned about the terms on which this investigation is going to be carried out. Will it be truly independent? Of course, Eric Holder is sort of, a former attorney general, the ultimate legal authority. And yet there's a board member who's involved, Arianna Huffington. Can she really be independent if she's on the board? If the head of HR is involved? HR has failed before, it seems, in this regard.
This has not been good for Uber lately. They've had a really rocky road since the beginning. There was a whole delete Uber app. What does it say to you about the company, Jodi?
I think it shows the way companies in the age of social media, first of all, are accountable to their customers in a whole new way, but also to their own employees. Often what we're seeing now is that it's really employees who are driving change at a company. And so I would keep my eye on what those Uber employees say today.
It's interesting here in his latest memo to employees, he says it's been a tough 24 hours. I know the company's hurting, but he seems in pointing out women employees, which is another issue here within the company. He says in engineering and scientist roles, 15% are women at Uber. And then he compares it to Facebook, 17%, Google, 18%, almost in defense, if you would. But there seems to be a problem in Silicon Valley, no, with women, yes?
Yes, you have to be very careful about those numbers because they're not really independently verified. The companies provide them. And categories like how many women engineers specifically do you have are often not broken out. The question about Uber is that its culture is very different than the kind of culture you see at Facebook or Google. This is a CEO who has bragged about boober, meaning kind of being able to get women on demand, just the way you can get a car on demand. It's a company that has prided itself on breaking the rules over time, entering markets even where it wasn't allowed, saying we're just going to proceed and ask questions later. And so I think the question is whether Uber can become a kind of more mature law-abiding company.
Jodi, there was a line that stuck out in Susan Fowler's blog post. She said, after she repeatedly told HR about this instance, she said the situation was escalated as far up the chain as it could be escalated, and still nothing was done. What does that suggest?
Well, I think she's asking a question, and whether she knows the answer or not, right?
Yeah.
Did it go all the way up to the CEO? And then I think the question is, what would the consequences be if it did? First of all, would this Eric Holder investigation really result in the CEO being grilled? And if it turns out that the complicity did go up very high, what would the redress be?
Right.
How actually do they want to address this?
Well, the fact that the
Signs of
CEO
it.
has hired Eric Holder, I think, sends a message
Yeah.
that he's taking this very, very seriously.
Signs of a
Yeah, to
systemic
do
problem.
something. Yes.
Jodi Kantor, thanks very much.